Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
At the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event, get deals so right, it almost feels wrong. Now's the best time to get that Hyundai you've always wanted. Plus, every new Hyundai comes with America's Best Warranty and 3 years or 36,000 miles of limited complimentary maintenance. Don't think you can get away with all that? Think again. The Hyundai Getaway Sales Event. Visit your local Hyundai dealer today. It's a great day for a new Hyundai.
Movies, the final frontier. This is the first voyage of the crew of the next generation. Their mission, to boldly go where the other cast went before and attempt to make odd numbers not suck. Did they succeed? Find out as we attempt to prove to you that Star Trek Generations is not that bad. Welcome one and all to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades and B movies, and a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Hello to all of our listeners in Southwark, England, and around the world. How you guys doing? Now, I know if you listen to the show, you all know that I'm a Star Wars geek. But that doesn't mean that I don't like a little bit of Trek, because I likes me a little bit of Trek too. And this is the first time I've had a chance to go down Trek Road, to boldly go down Trek Road. And here to join me, John Lashinsky from the Canadian Podcast Awards. John, how you doing, man?
Good, Joe Landrew.
So this is your first time on the show, so I hope you know what you signed up for. There are bad jokes and dad jokes for days here, but because it's your first time, please, can you let our listeners know a little bit about the Canadian Podcast Awards, especially since I just said hello to all of our listeners in England?
So I'm John Lashinsky. I'm from the Canadian Podcast Awards. We're a national awards program here in Canada to uplift Canadian content and Canadian voices in the podcasting space. We originally started as a conference called PodCamp Toronto. We've been doing that for 17 years, and then we started the awards about 7 years ago. And so our goal is to, help independent podcasters really get out there, beat the Americans.
And as a Canadian podcaster, let me just say that I'm really, really happy for all the work that you do, because really it's you guys take a lot on yourselves to be able to put this out there. So, if no one tells you, thank you very much. But you're here to talk Star Trek, which seems completely opposite of what you regularly do. So when you mentioned, I could talk Star Trek, what is it about Star Trek that makes you want to defend it so?
I guess it's just such a big part of my DNA at this point. I was born in 84. Star Trek The Next Generation came out in 86, I think. So I've lived with Star Trek my entire life since I can remember. This movie came out when I was 10 years old. So this has been a formative part of my adulthood, childhood, everything. So I'm a big defender. I'm sure your viewers can't see, but I have Star Trek stuff all over my background here in my apartment. I'm wearing a Star Trek uniform. I'm a big Star Trek nerd.
Okay, so as a Canadian, I remember when the final episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation were airing. This was a big deal to the point of they actually put this on the Jumbotron in the Sky Dome. Do you remember when the last episodes finally hit?
I do. So I grew up in Northern Ontario, so we didn't get the exposure to the Blue Jay Stadium and the Sky Dome airings, but I heard about that later once I moved to Toronto, and I heard about Jack Layton wearing his uniform to the event and all that sort of stuff. A politician here in Canada, uh, but yeah, when it was airing the final episodes, that was something that I lived through, something that I remember. Still get emotional about it.
I think no other show, I mean, there's very few shows that could say they stuck the landing on a series ender like Next Generation. Like to your memory, are there any other shows that stuck the landing so well?
Not really, not specific, not in this like genre either. Maybe, well, I don't know. Is Curb Your Enthusiasm really done or not? Like the last season was pretty good.
It's never
But,
done. It's never
yeah,
really
so
done.
like there's no landing to stick there. So yeah, it's hard to say. Like I don't think there has been.
I think maybe the only other one that could maybe compare would be the last episode of MASH. But I mean, like even then you're going back a little bit further. I would personally say that The Good Place also stuck the landing very well. I'm not going to say that one kind of, got me in the feels a little bit, but we're talking Star Trek. We're talking one of the greatest science fiction franchises of all time. And we're talking about the ultimate crossover, because here you had the merging of the original cast and the Next Generation just once in film form. And we're going to go down this road. But before we do, it is time to take Star Trek Generations and trailerize it.
From the cast that revitalized the franchise of your parents' youth, a show that saw the good in humanity and envisioned a future based on that ideal, comes a film that will kill your first hero, demolish the coolest ship, obliterate every single crew member, then bring them back because time ain't got nothing on this one, only to kill your first hero again. And at the same time, watch as the perfect being suffers an existential crisis because he can't handle the thought of feelings in a movie that's making us feel all sorts of crap. Aren't you happy you left the couch to go to the theater? Patrick Stewart and William Shatner together for one night only in Star Trek Generations. Rated PG for Pass the Gauntlet.
Nice.
Yeah, this is literally the passing of the gauntlet moment. This was where the last call for the original cast, at least some of the original cast in a film, and the first outing for the Next Generation. Now, before we get into who's in this film, we all know the theory of Star Trek films. The even number films are fantastic. The odd number films leave a little to be desired. This, of course, is, if you're doing the math, Star Trek 7, making it an odd number. So does the theory, the even number, odd number theory work for you as far as Star Trek films go?
Yeah, I guess it would. There are exceptions, like Nemesis is not a good movie. But yeah, I would say this one it didn't live up to expectations. The next one, First Contact, way better, like barn burner of a movie. Then Insurrection, not great. And then Nemesis, also not great. So they broke the curse.
Yeah,
not in a good way.
But even going back, like the motion picture, the very first Star Trek film, if I want to nap, the motion picture is great for it. Wrath of Khan, arguably 1 and 1A between that and First Contact as far as best Star Trek films go.
Yeah.
Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, I think is one of those odd number films that kind of gets maybe a little unfairly maligned. I think 3 might be the best of the odd numbers. 4, The Voyage Home, funny as hell. Love that film. Star Trek 5. I'm not looking forward to that one. And then Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, really might have... It's hard to say, because Wrath of Khan is fantastic and beloved. Undiscovered Country had a ton of good in it as well. So it's really hard to say what's the best even number. But this, as far as odd numbers go, Generations, I don't think is that bad.
No, and even like the odd number movies, I don't really see a lot of them as bad. It's just movies that you actually have to be interested in watching Star Trek to watch. Like there are movies more about cerebral things or like character focus, like things that you need to already have bought into this for.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something you can jump in like to Search for Spock. You have to know a whole lot of stuff to just jump into that movie. Whereas Wrath of Khan, you kind of can just jump in that and you get that this is a movie about sailors in space, basically.
This episode is brought to you by Chevrolet. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Chevrolet Certified Service Fresh Start Tire event. Visit Chevrolet.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only, highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
Switch to Verizon Business and get more from your internet without paying more for your internet. Get LTE Business Internet starting at $39 a month when paired with select business mobile plans. That's unlimited data, and with it, unlimited possibilities. Start saving today with Verizon Business, ranked #1 in small business internet customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Starting price for 25 megabits per second LTE internet plan with smartphone plan savings, plus taxes, fees, and economic adjustment charge. Terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
We off? 30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes.
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree.
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet.
You got it. You got it.
Peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
All right, well, let's get into who is in this film. The movie stars Patrick Stewart, Jonathan Frakes, LeVar Burton, Brent Spiner, Gates McFadden, Michael Dorn, Marina Sirtis, Whoopi Goldberg, William Shatner, James Doohan, Walter Koenig, and Malcolm McDowell. There is an almost starring in this film. Obviously, we're missing some of the original cast. George Takei apparently turned down returning as Sulu, which is why Demora Sulu, his daughter, was added to the film. DeForest Kelley also turned it down, apparently after reading the script, and not liking the fact that Bones would only appear in the beginning. And Leonard Nimoy turned it down, not just to appear in, but directing as well. Now, just quoting IMDb here, apparently he looked at the script and said, well, it doesn't matter who you have reading these lines. It could be given to anyone. And then he saw the movie and said, see, I was right. The interesting one, though, is in the role of Dr. Tullian Soren, as played by Malcolm McDowell. Marlon Brando apparently petitioned to play this role, but then Paramount said, yeah, no, we don't want to pay what Brando's asking. Marlon Brando in a Star Trek film?
That would have been a different movie for sure. Yeah, that's wild.
I mean, maybe at that day and age, maybe he could have been on Star Wars and played Jabba the Hutt. I'm just kidding. But it's one of those things where, yeah, Brando was a fantastic actor, but Dr. Soren is more of a physical role as well. And I don't think at that time Brando was kind of up for that role. But I mean, we also live in an age where the last credited role of Orson Welles is Transformers the movie is Unicron. So, I mean, really anything can happen. Maybe if this was an animated film, then Brando would have been good for it. But I think they chose well.
Yeah, I can't see him running around on the Vasquez Rocks very spryly as Malcolm McDowell did.
Yeah, I mean, dialogue-wise, yeah, sure, no problem, but no, not the physical aspect of it. This is actually the cinematic debut of 2 actors, Thomas Dekker, who played Patrick's son Thomas, who then went on to be John Connor in Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles, and Olivia Hack, who played one of Picard's daughters, also went on to play Cindy in 1995's The Brady Bunch. So some debuts here. The movie was directed by David Carson, who previously to this had directed episodes of The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. This film had a budget of $35 million. Domestically, brought in $75 million, and worldwide, $118 million. When it was released on the November 18th, 1994 weekend, debuted at number one, of course, because it's Star Trek, with $23 million. Also debuting, Leon the Professional debuted at number 5 with $5 million. Miracle on 34th Street, the 20th Century Fox one, with $2.7 million at number 8. And The Swan Princess debuted at number 10 with $2.4 million. Also in the top 5 were Interview with the Vampire in its second week at number 2, The Santa Claus also in its second week at number 3, and can't believe this, you want to talk about staying power, the 23rd week of The Lion King was still bringing in money, $5.5 million at number 4. There were some accolades for this film. At the 1995 Saturn Awards, it was nominated for Best Sci-Fi Film, lost to a movie that would spawn another great sci-fi television series, Stargate. And Whoopi Goldberg was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, lost to Mia Sara in Time Cop. At the 1995, no one. Time Cop? But I mean, it's Mia Sara, and she's pretty good. At the 1995 Hugo Awards, it was nominated for Best Dramatic Presentation and was nominated along with a few other movies, but lost to Star Trek The Next Generation, All Good Things. So lost to itself in a way. At the 1995 Universe Reader's Choice Awards, it won for Best Writing for a Genre Motion Picture, but at the 1995 Razzies, because the Razzies just couldn't leave it alone, William Shatner was nominated for Worst Supporting Actor, but lost. This is going to sound really weird as I say this. Lost to O.J. Simpson for Naked Gun 33 1/3, The Final Insult. When you think 1994, yeah,
it was a simpler time.
Simpler time where a white Ford Bronco could race down the freeway at regular speeds. But the reason why we are here, not just because John has impeccable taste in films, are the critics. Over at Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a tomatometer of 47% and a popcorn meter of 57%. But to get the bigger picture, at Metacritic, the film has a Metascore of 55. At IMDb, it sits at 6.6 stars out of 10. At Letterboxd, it has 3 stars, giving it a 60%. And at the movie database, sits at 65%, giving this an aggravated aggregate of 58.33%. But I want to put this into the bigger perspective of the Star Trek franchise. Basing our ranking by Tomatometer, the critics score at Rotten Tomatoes, this is the third lowest film. Nemesis, as you mentioned, sits at 38%. And of course, Star Trek V, Final Frontier, 23%. But that's about to get a little bit better, because currently, sitting at 17% is the brand new Star Trek Section 31, which was released straight to Paramount Plus. So, looking at this, taking Section 31 out of the equation, Generations being the third worst Star Trek film, is that accurate?
No, because I don't think you mentioned. Did you say Insurrection in there?
No, Insurrection is actually ranked a little bit higher than Generations. Not much, but a little bit.
Yeah, I would place Insurrection below Generations. I would even maybe place the motion picture below Generations as well.
You know, I can't disagree with you on that one. Like, let's get into this now. Since we're here, okay? The motion picture, was the very first presentation of the original series cast on the big screen. And given the time that it was released, it kind of made sense that it felt like they were going for a very Kubrick-esque kind of film. And it really kind of fell flat and boring. This being the first outing for the Next Generation crew, I think they found the tone much better with this one. But I mean, like, you take a look at the motion picture, I'm actually surprised they got a second film based on how poorly that came out.
Yeah, and they had to make a lot of changes to get that second movie out too, if I recall correctly. The guy who put together the second film also put together The Undiscovered Country. So the two best movies from that franchise, from that cast, really owe a lot to the people behind those two movies. And to an extent, Next Generation getting greenlit for a TV series, owe a lot to them as well.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like, if the movies don't do as well as they did, then obviously we don't get Next Generation. And you think around that time, Star Trek 3 did well enough. Star Trek 4, as directed by Leonard Nimoy, was just an absolute fun gem of a film. And you could almost take a look at Star Trek 4 and take a look at the levity amongst the cast members, which was always there to begin with, but definitely stood out more so in Star Trek 4, and see how that also kind of bled into the eventual levity that you could have with the Generations cast.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Generations cast feels... So the original series cast, I would say, feels more like a family.
Mm-hmm.
The Next Generation cast feels more like friends, I guess, where like professional friends, I guess. It's kind of described as competency porn, where people are just doing their best and they're doing well, and that's it. And I feel like the space there for people to be comedic and for there to be fun moments is a lot more open with that than the original series. The series only ran 3 seasons, so there really wasn't much runway there for it to be comedic. And then you're straight into movies. I mean, the animated series was actually pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't get enough love, but yeah, straight into the movies, you're dealing with things like life and death right away, like aging, similar themes in this movie. So there wasn't a lot of space there for it to be comedic, except that Star Trek The Voyage Home, the whale movie.
I just have images of James Doohan talking into a mouse going, "Hello, computer." But,
100%.
But let's get into the breakdown of this film. We're going to start right at the captain's chair. Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard in his first Star Trek film. Your thoughts?
Probably one of the better ones. I think the other movies suffer a lot from Patrick Stewart trying to inject himself into the role, or things that he wishes he could be doing into the role. I feel like this one didn't suffer that as much because it was the first movie. So, in Nemesis, he's driving around on a dune buggy, and in Insurrection, he's MacGyver, basically, John Ramboing around the planet, shooting up stuff. So I think this movie was able to keep his character more true to the Next Generation character that we knew. And for me, it was a better performance.
I think that's one of the key things here. And we'll probably get to talking about this a little bit later, but this movie actually really felt very much like an episode, like an elongated episode of Next Generation. Like the fact that you didn't have, movie unique Star Trek or Starfleet uniforms for the cast. They were very much as you saw them on the TV show. And Picard, almost. But Picard here is not, like you said, the action hero like he was in like First Contact. He's the statesman. He's the diplomat, which is also, I think, a good thing when it comes to the fact that when he first tries to fight Sauron at the end. By the way, dear listeners, spoilers like a mofo if you have not seen this film. When he actually fights Sauron the first time, he gets his ass kicked. Let's be honest. And then, of course, when he comes back with Kirk is the one that does more of the physical fighting, and because that was always a Captain Kirk thing. Picard really did feel like Picard in this, as opposed to, like you say, like the more action hero stuff that came afterwards. But to the same token as well, those later films felt more made for the big screen, whereas this felt, probably because you had a television director doing it, felt like an elongated TV show.
Yeah, and to circle back a bit, so they part of this movie's directive was get rid of the Enterprise, uh, and to get new costumes for the cast, which they scrapped at the last minute, and they had to borrow costumes from Deep Space Nine and Voyager. So they were really trying to use this movie to set up future movies to be more standalone. Um, and then Picard not being able to fight Sauron seemed weird to me, because we've seen him like take on two Klingons by himself, which should not be something a human can do, but he did it and he came out of it alive. So like he can't fight this 300-year-old Elorian. Like, to me, that plot hole there as well, as there are many in this movie. But
maybe it's me, but I always looked at Picard not as almost like the anti-Kirk, right?
mm-hmm.
Because Kirk was very much, throw caution to the wind, and damned if I lose my ish and my shirt on the away mission. I'm going to be the one to get things done because I'm the guy in charge, and the guy in charge. Kirk was very much John Wayne. Picard always felt like, again, this is my take on it, Picard was a bit more, for lack of a better term, upper crust. He was much more of the, supposed to be above the physicalness, right? This is where Star Trek was supposed to be about exploration and discovery and communication and really the best of humanity, which is what Gene Roddenberry wanted the show to be. There are times, of course, when, yes, Picard did, get a little physical. And I mean, let's be honest, he survived a Cardassian torture routine, looking at 4 lights as opposed to 5. But here, and maybe it's just a pacing thing, and maybe it's just they wanted this to feel more chess piecey as opposed to more popcorn action flick. But I mean, it's Patrick Stewart. It still kind of works in that guise, even though it's not very much an action film.
Yeah, 100%. And they really tried to lean into the action films from here on out. But yeah, it really fits the character we know in TNG as being a statesman, as being an intellectual. The whole debate back then was, Kirk or Picard. Like, those were your two choices back then. And did you want the hero of the Wild Wild West, basically, wagon train to the stars? Or did you want the person who was, more intellectual, who had moved past all that, who was now trying to better humanity? There wasn't, these conflicts every week where it was a gunfight. It was, this is the treaty you signed, and subsection B, clause C, states that we can have an arbiter of our choice. And they're hibernating for 6 months right now. So in 6 months, we'll come back to this discussion.
I don't know what would take longer. Starfleet basically negotiating based on Starfleet regulations and treaties, or the Doctor, basically dropping in the Shadow Proclamation on everything. Maybe it's a Tenet era thing, but I don't know. Maybe, did you pick up on this? Because I rewatched this the night before we recorded this. And of course, next to Jean-Luc Picard, probably the most iconic role for Patrick Stewart is Professor Xavier from the X-Men. And then they get to stellar cartography, and I'm like, holy crap, they're in Cerebro.
Yeah, 100%.
Like about 6 years before Cerebro happened, but you can't now disassociate. Yeah, exactly. You can't disassociate it anymore. Like, you had about a 6-year window where you wouldn't have that association. Everything now is like, oh, he's in Cerebro. It's all good now.
Yeah.
No wonder they cast him as that role. Jonathan Frakes, who played Will Riker, your thoughts on him in this?
Good. Like, it was very much like the TV series. They just came right off of shooting the TV series, and they only had a few months, I think, between this and the end of the Next Generation television series. So they were at their peak in their roles, and it really carried over into this film. There's no uh, critique I would have on their performance as their characters, really, especially for Jonathan Frakes. He's a consummate professional.
Mm.
That character is him.
And a very good director too. I mean, you have to
Yeah.
give him credit for First Contact and being a fantastic film. But with this series, and if you watched enough of the episodes, you realize that yes, there were some episodes that were very mission oriented or plot oriented, but every now and then you'd have a character tale, and it kind of focused on like one character primarily. You had Picard episodes, you had Riker episodes. There was I still remember the one where Riker was like undercover and he was on some planet like doing a first contact mission, but he was, yeah, exactly. You're nodding your head, you know exactly the episode I'm talking about. You had Beverly Crusher episodes. You had episodes that highlighted different characters. If you're looking at this like an episode, this is not a Riker episode. I felt like there were certain characters that were kind of not necessarily glossed over, but partially ignored because it wasn't their story. And Riker kind of fit into that category here.
Yeah, they do sideline a lot of characters in this movie. You know, it's and in the future ones as well. Like it becomes the Picard Data show from here on out. Would there be more stuff for Riker to do? Possibly. But I think he fit in very well to this movie, especially once Picard was off the ship. He was able to really shine in that role, taking over command of the Enterprise while Picard was gone. Unfortunately, it wasn't great for the Enterprise, but everyone made it out alive. And especially at the end, you know, he plans to live forever, and so far he has.
I think it's one of the things too, where you take a look at First Contact, and the part of the reason why that movie worked so well, I think, is that you split the crew up for the majority of the film, right? Where you had Worf and Picard and Data on the Enterprise dealing with the Borg, and then you had Riker and Deanna, you know, on at Earth trying to help Zefram Cochrane and making sure that First Contact happened. Here, they don't really separate them too much, or for extended periods of time. So you don't really have too much in the way of that dual action plot line going at the same time. And I think that would have helped this a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too. Like there is no B story here. The B story is Kirk. So he kind of sucked up a lot of the air in the room, really, trying to shoehorn him into basically a television episode plot.
Well, I mean, there is, I think, a B story here, and that really stems down to Brent Spiner, who, of course, plays Data once again. Sure. And here you have the continuing story of Data trying to achieve humanity. And there are moments here, and I'll admit, there are moments where I'm like, okay, you can stop laughing now. But your thoughts on the B story of Data and his quest for humanity?
I think it was okay. I'm not sure it was something that we really needed, but I don't think it was bad in any way. Like there are scenes where it's like, okay, that's enough, like pull it together. But you know, it really progressed his character, and you know, the Data we see now is really a fully fleshed out version of this. They really took it from here and took it to the end zone, to use a sports metaphor. I don't know if I used it correctly. I'm a Star Trek nerd.
We're good. We're good with it. You have achieved football prominence here at this point. But I mean, there's one moment in this film, and this is kind of like that little, okay, we're on the big screen now, we can do this. As the Enterprise D is about to crash onto the planet of no name, we get Data dropping an S-bomb. Because I'm a certain age, the minute this happened, instantly, in my mind, I flash back to 1986. And Spike Witwicky from Transformers the movie, and if you watched it in theaters, you heard this where it says, oh, what are we going to do? And I'm like, when I'm watching this film, I'm like, did Spike just swear in a Transformers animated film? Because I think he just did. And I remember, too, I had like a VHS copy when I was young, and they had taken that part out Now you watch it, it's back in. Data saying, did this feel necessary, or was this one of those more, we're doing this just to really hammer home the emotions plot?
I don't know if it was necessary. I don't think it was like, yeah, at the time it was a big deal. Like they're saying in Star Trek. Now they swear up a storm. But at the time, yeah, it was a big deal. I don't know if I enjoyed it. I liked it.
Yeah.
It really hit home, like, what the stakes were. Like, yeah, like we're in trouble. And for someone who's feeling things for like the first time, like that would probably be your reaction, if not worse.
Yeah. I mean, at that point too, it's almost like this is their flag in the sand, where it's like, yep, we're on the big screen now and we can say bad words, just not too bad words, because it is still a Star Trek film. And I think that was probably the right amount, the safest way you can do it. Because I mean, hell, they can do it in Transformers the movie, they can do it in Star Trek. And you're right. Like I remember watching Picard when they released that series. I'm like, damn, Star Trek grew up, but I mean, it doesn't take away from it. I think it's one of those things where Star Trek did grow up a little bit with, later series, and allowing their characters to talk more like their situation kind of demanded. Like, if all that is going on, if you think I'm going to maintain my cool and my vocabulary, it's probably not going to happen. So the current series that are on now, and allowing the characters to have a bit more, for lack of a better term, freedom and looseness in their dialogue, does that still mean Star Trek to you? Because you watched Next Gen, you watched Deep Space Nine, obviously that was on network television, but there was a PG-ness to it. Does that take away from the current series now?
Yeah, I'll say I don't like it in the current series. I think they probably take it a little bit too far to be edgy, where it's not necessarily needed. Like I'm not like a prude or anything. I like, yeah, swear where it's necessary, but I think a lot of the time they do it just for like to be like, oh, we can do this. And for me, like the scene in Picard where the fucking hubris, like to me, that scene and that situation didn't warrant that kind of language in that moment. Like it just seemed like really out of place to me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like Data saying the ship's about to crash, like that seems very in place. That seems almost measured.
Yeah.
Calm.
I mean, I keep flashing back to, things my parents taught me as I was growing up, where, those who are crass and crude and constantly using 4-letter words show how little intelligence they have. And I admittedly drop the occasional F-bomb in this show, usually when I'm talking about Michael Bay, but I mean, I'm warranted there. But still, it's one of those things where I always took a look at Star Trek as the smart science fiction show. Yes, yeah. Star Wars is great. I love my Star Wars. I'll always love my Star Wars, and it's space opera. This was more from a combat perspective. It felt more like submarine combat as opposed to X-Wings and TIE fighters flying around, more dogfight type combat. But again, I looked at this as this was supposed to be an elevated society, beyond just potty mouthing all over the place. And you're right. I think one S-bomb in your first film outing completely warranted and fit the moment. And it was one of those things where, just like Transformers the movie, it picked its spot perfectly. Sometimes you only need just one. And giving it to Data as well added the impact. Like if Riker dropped it, it'd be like, psh, finally Riker gets to speak his mind. But it's Data. So it kind of means a little bit more there.
Yeah, and it plays into the comedic effect of it as well. Like it gives it a little bit of lightness. Whereas if someone else said it, it might be less funny.
Yeah.
But here it's played for comedy, so it kind of softens the blow. If your parents hear it on the TV and they're like, "What did that show just say?" But yeah, and even like, not to get into a tangent about the current series, but like I feel like that's kind of an issue with the current series as well. Like they've really gotten away from like, this is an enlightened society. doing enlightened things where it's just kind of like all over the place now, like specifically in Picard, they're like, oh, we're not going to help this race of people resettle when their home star is about to go nova because there was an incident on Mars. Like, no, you would still try and help them. You would still do something. You wouldn't just like leave them out to dry. Like, to me, yeah, that's a whole other tangent on current track.
If we keep going down that road, I think you're going to be dropping some SNF bombs here. Okay, so LeVar Burton, who played Geordie LaForge, and again, not the biggest role, a bit bigger than Riker, and of course, always plays so well with Brent Spiner. But your thoughts on LeVar Burton here in his last appearance with the visor?
Yeah, I guess they had to get rid of it after it caused such an issue. Used as a spy device. I liked it. His starring scene in this is rolling under those doors. Uh, Great scene. Warp core breach. Roll under the doors.
And that's the thing. Like, Geordie LaForge was always not necessarily not an action hero. Of course, he was more cerebral because he is, engineering. But you got a little bit of fun in this. You got to do more things. And, with the fact that they had to separate the saucer section from the rest of the ship, you were going down, right? So obviously, and he still never loses that humanity. He's making sure that the kids are taken care of. The last one out of that section before they separate. For the little time that Geordie LaForge is on screen, and LeVar Burton was always good at this, he does it well. He comes across with, intelligence and humanity at the same time as making sure that Ish gets done, but also as a sounding board for Data in this. He's always been that touch point of humanity between Deanna Troi, Geordie LaForge, and Beverly Crusher. Those seem to be the three biggest humanity touch points for Data. Geordie LaForge once again hits that here.
Well, yeah, and like in the original, synthesis of the TNG series, they were supposed to be Geordie and Data were supposed to be like a pair together. They're both different. They both see the world differently. They were nicknamed the Seers because they see things differently. So like putting them together in this movie makes perfect sense. And yeah, Geordie comes across, as caring in everything he does in this film. He's very concerned about Data, even when Data's being annoying, and picking up that girl in the hallway to make sure all the kids are taken care of and being the last one off, like you said. He cares and he gets his job done, and he does it while still caring. He doesn't push anything to the side or like take shortcuts to get it done. He does it and he does it well, and he does it while still caring.
I still flash back to that one episode where James Doohan had guest starred on Next Generation, and was the whole like, wait, you told them exactly how long it takes you to get something done? How are you supposed to work miracles like that? But LeVar Burton still working miracles here. Talking about the other two touch points for Data, Marina Sirtis, of course, again, is Deanna Troi. Again, not much for her to do in this. This is another one of those characters that felt pushed aside.
Yeah, I mean, she does have a bit of a role in talking with Picard about the loss of his family and the whole theme revolving around, getting older and aging and family. So she had that moment. But yeah, outside of that, there really isn't a lot for her to do other than crash the ship.
Which, Riker's doing a good job on that on his own. But then, of course, you had, speaking of being pushed aside and pushed overboard, Gates McFadden, again, as Beverly Crusher. Again, really not much for her to do here.
No, a couple scenes in sickbay, getting people evacuated from the engineering hall sickbay into the saucer section and getting pushed off a sailing ship. Really nothing going on. And some exposition about who Soren is.
Yeah. Interesting thought, though, because, of course, we remember All Good Things, knowing that in that future, Picard and Crusher at one point were married. Did you notice that in the Nexus, Picard's Nexus wife was also a redhead? So I'm surprised that they didn't put Beverly Crusher in that moment.
Yeah, I think they probably did that to not confuse the audiences or something like that. Like, is this Beverly from the Enterprise in here now because the ribbon hit the same planet? Or I think even Guinan being there was kind of confusing for people, I think. So they probably did that to just avoid that. And the whole Nexus scene is a weird sort of tapestry of Victorian era uh, Englishness.
Which is really where when you realize that Patrick Stewart has at one point in time played Ebenezer Scrooge. So I'm like, oh, did we go back? Are we going to get a visit from Tiny Tim? But you mentioned Guinan, as played by Whoopi Goldberg. Obviously they're in the past, they're in the future. I mean, like Guinan's always been, talked about as this character who has lived a long time and, knows so much about everything. Guinan feels like the Doctor in Star Trek, as far not Beverly Crusher. I'm talking about like Doctor Who, the Doctor, in that they've been around forever and they know everything, and it's always that touch point for everybody, and that sounding board, that almost like the word is escaping me here, but the conscience of everything. Your thoughts on Guinan in this?
Yeah, I think she played a role like she would have in the series. It really wasn't a lot for her to do except give some exposition about what the Nexus is and help him out in the Nexus. But beyond that, maybe a little bit underutilized, um, especially given like where she ends up later in the movie, like in the Nexus helping him. It seems like there could have been a little bit more there, but I always enjoy Whoopi in an episode.
Yeah, I mean, she is great in the role, absolutely. But you're right. I think we needed more exposition because really, Guinan is the only character that we know of that apparently can exist both in and out of the Nexus. And not to, make it sound mean or anything, what the hell is so special about Guinan that she's the only person that can seemingly do this? Because to my knowledge, there has been nothing about Guinan in the past, aside from the fact that she has seen a little bit of everything and is very much the conscience of the entire cast and whatever the plot means. But we've never known someone to be able to have that kind of power, that kind of, dual presence. And I understand that because they beamed her out of the wave back during Kirk's time, and the fact that she's still around, like, does she know that she lives in both the Nexus and not? Because I'm curious, because we needed to know more about this ribbon, because going back to the very first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, right? And yes, Farpoint is a great episode, don't get me wrong, but it's like one of those, oh, well, this mysterious thing shows up, and then it gets a little weird from there. The ribbon felt like a problem without much description until we start to figure out that it's just like this somehow portal into this weird timeless existence. Did you need more exposition, and was Guinan the person that needed to deliver this?
Yeah, probably, because I guess it depends on like how you conceptualize that she's in there, but also in the real world, is it like a Thomas Riker situation where it's a transporter duplicate that's stuck in there?
Mm-hmm.
Because Guinan on the Enterprise didn't seem to like mention like, "Hey, I'm in there still. Like, I'll come get you." And how would the Guinan that's in there as a duplicate know to go see Picard? Because they wouldn't have had this discussion that Picard was going to be in there, or like, it's a little weird because in the exposition scene, she's like, once you go in there, you're not going to want to leave. But no one was saying he was going to go in there. So how did she know to say that once you go in there, you're not going to want to leave when that wasn't anyone's plan?
Mm-hmm. And
so maybe they are connected somehow, but
even the guy in there said, you can leave the Nexus. How would she know? Do people leave the Nexus on a regular basis? And also, bring this up here. So Dr. Sauron waited 87 years to live life in the Nexus. And I get that he wants to be in an existence where, you can be with your family and whatnot, but you're going to pine for 87 years for this?
yeah, well, it kind of made it sound real, like a real sweet gig. But the entire time Picard's in there, it's reminding him that it's not real. And same with Kirk, like when he's jumping over that ridge, it doesn't feel real. So like how is this like this super great place that you're not going to want to leave when it's constantly telling you to leave?
And is the Nexus sentient? That's never
Yeah.
explained, because how would the Nexus know what kind of world you want to live in? Like, it's more exposition. I don't normally ask for more exposition, but more exposition in this case.
Yeah, like I think they didn't want to because it would leave open more plot holes, I would think. Like the more you explain it, the more problems you're maybe going to have uh, beyond the ones that they were already having with this movie.
The corner you're painting yourself into is getting smaller and smaller
Yeah,
with
exactly.
with every brushstroke. I get it. Michael Dorn, the last Next Gen cast member for us to talk about as Worf, again, ridiculously ignored through the majority of the film, but that scene on the holodeck is just so much fun. And you mentioned that for the most part, most episodes are like very Picard oriented, but Worf is one of the best characters, and it's a shame that he didn't get more.
Yeah, he really doesn't have a lot to do. And you would think maybe there would be more interplay between him and the Duras sisters. You know, they have a big history between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
So a little underutilized in that sense. And really, I don't even know if that's the right villain to have in the movie as, you know, the antagonist, side piece or whatever you want to say, Soren's ride. But yeah, underutilized. Good intro in the movie, jumping into the water, being promoted. No mention about his relationship with Deanna at all, which was a feature at the end of the All Good Things. But yeah, kind of a disappointment for Michael Dorn, I would imagine.
And it's a shame too, because some of my favorite episodes are definitely Worf episodes. Anytime you put a band in, someone's like, "Oh, good, you bore that well." He is the funniest Klingon out there.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
At Sephora, we've got what you want because you're obsessed with your skin and we're obsessed with what it needs. Sephora has the best products to help you get beautiful, glowing, radiant skin. With an extensive, inclusive range of results-driven formulas and in-store beauty advisors to help you find exactly which are right for you, the best skincare is only at Sephora. Sephora, for all your skincare.
Let's get to the original series cast. Captain James T. Kirk, as played by William Shatner. Your thoughts on him?
He has been doing this role for so long that it's must just be part of him because outstanding performance by him. Him getting off the chair, like, you know, ready to jump in. You could really like feel that sense of like, I need to be in the action. I want to be here. I don't want to be retired, which he echoes later in the movie. You know, don't retire. Don't let them take you away from the chair, which has also been a theme in the other movies that he's been in. Good performance, terrible death.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. I have a thought about this film, and it's nothing against Shatner's performance as Kirk, because I mean, let's be honest, Kirk isn't one of the most iconic characters in science fiction if William Shatner doesn't put his all into it. So just know I'm not taking away from Shatner as Kirk. But here's the problem I have with having this kind of gauntlet handover kind of film is that the entire Kirk angle in this is that he's having problems with the idea of retirement, and telling everyone don't walk away from the chair, because if you do, you'll never get back. That's what you were supposed to do in Star Trek 6. Like that was the perfect send off for that cast. This feels like Shatner not being able to let go of the chair. It feels like this entire plot section was written because Shatner wanted it that way. Like, do you feel like Kirk's appearance period, do you feel that diminishes from the fact that this is the first next gen film?
Yes. And yeah, like a lot of the TOS cast didn't want to be a part of this movie because they felt Star Trek 6 was the best send off they could have. So they didn't want to do another one where they would just be, walk on roles. Obviously this was like, I think, a studio directive to bridge the two movie franchises. I don't think it was really necessary, and I don't think it was done very well to pass the torch between the two. But
I mean, that's the thing. If you've never seen Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, this is one of those moments where you can feel like you almost want to roll the credits and then have like the cast all come out and do almost like a theater curtain call, because they save the day, they save the ambassador, and they get this like slow clap around what is kind of like the United Nations there. And it feels like that moment where you're applauding not the fact that the day is saved and the baddies are stopped, and no, it felt like the applause was for Shatner, for Leonard Nimoy, and James Doohan, and Michelle, like for that whole cast. That felt like the slow clap moment for the cast, the standing ovation for everything that they had done for the Star Trek franchise.
Yeah, and they ended off with their signatures on the screen. Like it couldn't have been a better send off, I don't think, for that cast.
Yeah. Next Gen didn't need the gauntlet handed to them. They were already running with it. So you really didn't need this. And as much as Shatner always will be Captain Kirk. Sorry, Chris Pine. You do good, but sorry, Chris Pine. We did not need the gauntlet handed over to them. But you mentioned Kirk's death. The second one, not the first one. This whole look off into like the middle third, if you will, and then just the oh my, and then he stops. Now, Shatner himself has said that basically that line came to him because this was Kirk looking at where no man has gone before, his final frontier. And oh my seemed like the more natural response to that. But you don't seem to like his death.
I enjoy how he acted it. I don't like how he died or the circumstances around his death. I feel like it was kind of cheap. Even the original script that they had to do a reshoot. He originally was shot in the back by Sauron. So they had to reshoot that he died on a flying bridge. It just, I don't know. It seemed like not a good use of the character for the amount of time he was in the film. Like he's barely in it. And then they just kill him off right away, doing kind of nothing. Like it's not his first death in the film is how you would think he would die, saving the Enterprise, saving the crew. He saved a planet of millions of people, whatever, Viridian 3. Congratulations. But like it seemed kind of anticlimactic for the character.
Yeah, it seemed almost like he needed to have like the bigger action hero death. I agree with you. Absolutely. The fact that he quote unquote died the beginning of the film, saving the ship, one last heroic act of captaincy of the Enterprise, in this case. If you had ended that storyline there and used that as a way to introduce at least this wave that was a portal to the Nexus, then we don't see Kirk and the original crew again, then you could sit there and say, that seems like an interesting bridge, not necessarily a passing of the gauntlet. That just happens to be, but then would people argue that you have Kirk and Picard in the same film, but we never have a scene with them together? Like
that
100%. Yeah. If you did that, I don't think you'd have people angrier, because it's like, where was that moment?
Yeah. And so like as a 10-year-old watching the trailers and having all the action figures and all the play sets, like I watched the trailer right before we did this as well. And it doesn't say Kirk is going to be on the Enterprise D, but you kind of expect him to be on the Enterprise D at some point with the crew. And, maybe a more fitting end is for him to be on the star drive, getting it away from the saucer section or something, or like to me, that would be more of a death that would be acceptable to the franchise and to the fan base. Him dying on an Enterprise, any Enterprise, I think is like the top peak death for Kirk. But yeah, when I was a kid playing with my toys, I always imagined there would be more interplay between him and the rest of the crew and the Enterprise, and not 10, 15 minutes where he fought the Gorn.
Yeah, no, it's so many ways you could rewrite this film.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel bad for Walter Koenig and James Doohan, because they show up for a little bit and then we don't see them again. Well, 87 years, right? But I mean, the fact that they're there and they still have the camaraderie that you see on screen with Kirk. There's the line that Scotty says, like, is there something wrong with your chair, Captain? Like, I like the fact that they're there, but I also don't like the fact that they're there.
Well, yeah, and there's a cut scene as well where Kirk's like skydiving and doing daredevil stuff to like feel alive again. That was totally cut out from all of this as well. Yeah, I like that they're there. It's good that Chekhov gets to meet the TNG crew. Now everyone has, except for Nichelle. Scotty was in an episode famously. Bones was in the first episode, Encounter of Farpoint. Spock was in at least 2 episodes. So they all get to make the rounds except Nichelle.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned them earlier. Lursa and B'Etor, Barbara March and Gwyneth Walsh, returning from the show to the big screen. Not the main villains, but definitely one of the more memorable pair of villains from Star Trek. Your thoughts on them kind of getting in on the fun in this?
I also think they were a bit underutilized. I think, again, there's millions of ways to rewrite this movie, but I think more could have been done with their characters, especially with Worf there. There's a history with the Duras family, Worf, and the Enterprise specifically. And the choice to put them on a 20-year-old bird of prey, I don't know. It just, like, I don't envy what the writers had to do. They had to shoehorn a lot of stuff into this movie that the studio wanted them to put in this movie. They did the best they could, I guess, with the time they had. There was a quick turnaround from this movie and the TV series. But yeah, they're underutilized, and I wish there was a little bit more. They're very over-the-top characters, but something could have been done more with them. Bring Sela in, Tasha Yar's daughter. Like, that could have been a more interesting movie altogether.
I mean, they did make for some really good comedic relief, which you need in a Star Trek film. The fact that they're watching the feed from Geordi's visor, and it's like, is he the only engineer that doesn't go to engineering? Like, these were some decently lighthearted moments, but I think it's actually a good thing to bring 2 familiar characters in to maybe not be the big bad, but definitely be on the baddie's side. And I say that going back to the motion picture. You had so many different characters that you could have brought from the original series to Star Trek the Motion Picture, but we get V'Ger, and a film that seems less about Kirk and Spock and Bones and the crew, and more about William Decker? Who is William Decker? Yes, I recognize he's played by Stephen Collins, but who the heck is William Decker? Like, I want a Star Trek movie about Star Trek people. And here, while yes, we do have a new villain in Sauron, you have the Daughters of Duros. And it's a familiarity. It's like, oh, they're here. This is good, right? I will say that they're dying because of a proton torpedo that hits. It felt very much paralleling the death of Chang in Star Trek 6.
Well, they reused the VFX.
When I say it felt familiar, it felt real familiar. But it's one of those things where I like that they were there. I like that they weren't the main villains because, of course, you had Malcolm McDowell as Tully and Soren. You know, a big enough name to be the villain in a major motion picture for the first generation movie. But your thoughts on Malcolm McDowell?
I really enjoyed his characterization of the character. Great actor, obviously. A lot of his lines in the movie, stuck with me since watching the movie as a 10-year-old. Probably not the message the movie was trying to get across to me, but I'll always remember that time is a predator stalking you, and it's the fire in which we burn. Like, he really, like, you can feel in him, like, he sees time is coming for him. And Picard says as well, like, he's realizing, there are more days behind him than there are ahead. And, as I get older, it's, wow, yeah, like, I can see what they're feeling. I can feel it. It's palpable. Like, aging sucks.
One of the things I found very interesting with Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, is that it felt like it took a lot of cues from Shakespeare. I mean, hell, it took lines from Shakespeare too, let's be honest. But Sauron feels almost like a Shakespearean villain in this. He's eloquent, he's educated, he's determined, he's not going to be swayed from his path. And damn to the 230 some odd million people that he's going to kill on his way to try to get into the Nexus. But he's not a stage villain. He's not projecting to the back row with everything that he says. It's a very calculated villain. He's even keel. He's a man of science, even if he's a man of like deranged science. I think that works in I don't know if it would work in Star Wars. I think it works in Star Trek.
Yeah, it's definitely a more intellectual type of villain. And, he's an Elorian. He's a listener. We've never seen an Elorian that's, out of control or like acting up. They're very quiet. They listen and they seem to know a lot. So I think it fit within that race's profile and he really played it well.
Going back to that very first scene on the Enterprise B, obviously we'd mentioned Demora Sulu, played by Jacqueline Kim, and I thought she did a fairly good job, but you got to look carefully at some of these actors here because there are some identifiable actors. Of course, Captain John Harriman, as played by Alan Ruck, who also played Cameron on Ferris Bueller's Days Off. Your thoughts on Alan Ruck in this role?
I think the performance was good. Could it have been better? We'll have to wait till Tuesday to see.
Tim Russ makes an appearance before playing Tuvok in Voyager. He's on the bridge as well, but also as the science officer is Jeanette Goldstein. And people will probably remember her because she was John Connor's adoptive mother in Terminator 2. So very cool looking around the Enterprise B and seeing a few familiar faces here.
Yeah, Star Trek always has like a great history of like bringing in people that are doing like background scenes or like just walk-on roles that end up becoming people that you would see and recognize in other franchises and properties.
Yeah, I mean, even Star Trek 6, and again, I keep referencing Star Trek 6, but it's a damn good film if you haven't seen it, has a very small cameo from Christian Slater as an ensign, basically, coming into the door and saying you're wanted on the bridge. But it's Christian Slater. But that's the thing. Star Trek is one of those franchises where as Marlon Brando proved apparently, people wanted to be involved with the franchise. And I love these little hat tips from people who are fans of the series and grew up with it and wanted to be a part of it. I mean, take a look at Star Wars The Force Awakens, right? You had Daniel Craig in there as a stormtrooper. You had Kevin Smith as the voice of a stormtrooper. You have these little cameos because people want to be involved in this. And I love that Star Trek still brings in those people who know the franchise, love the lore, and just want to play in that sandbox.
Yeah, and that's how Guinan got on the show in the first place. Like, she grew up watching the show on the original series, and she wanted to be on the show, and she put it out there, and she got on the show. And even as recently as the Section 31 movie, we have Jamie Lee Curtis in the franchise now.
Which, hat tip to Jamie Lee Curtis. Before we recorded this show, you had sent me a video that continued the storyline of Generation. So to the listeners who haven't watched this yet, can you explain what this video is?
So there's a group that's been putting together sort of, I guess you could say, like archival type of footage. They're really trying to create an experience using VR sometimes about the entire Star Trek universe. And one of the clips that they've been putting together over the last few years really connects to the end of Generations. There's clips of them like lifting the saucer section off the planet, and when we later see in Picard, it gets refurbished. And in this latest video, Kirk is back magically somehow, and he travels through time with a Betelgeusian, someone from the planet Betelgeuse. And goes into the J.J. Abrams universe to be with Spock as he's dying.
When you watch this, obviously there's going to be those moments in between films that people are always going to wonder, well, what happens in between this film and this film? Star Wars covers this a lot very well in their expanded universe novels, even though most of the original expanded universe novels are now no longer canon. Damn it, Disney. But watching these videos and seeing those gaps filled in, is this what fans want? And were you excited to watch this?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, it got to me that, like, even watching this movie last night, like, I could feel myself at the beginning, like, it's getting very emotional. And this clip, obviously, where you see Kirk and Spock, like two iconic characters, two lived and died for each other, reunite. It was a special moment. Is it something all fans want? Probably not, but is it something that I think a lot of people connected with and enjoyed seeing? I think so. And even like the nods to Savick and Spock's son that you would know about if you went through like Star Trek's own expanded universe type of comics and novels and stuff like that. They were included in there as well. So like, I think it's good. I would hope to see more of it. The filming techniques that they used to do this are, out of this world. It's like next level stuff. Sam Witwer from Smallville and Battlestar Galactica fame is playing Kirk, but the makeup is digital prosthetics and it's in camera on set. It's not, done afterwards by a VFX house. This is being done live on set so that you can see how his facial movements inform the Kirk's facial movements laid on top of his face. So he had to learn like how to move his face to make the makeup move the way Kirk's face does. So this whole thing is like crazy to me that this is where we are with filmmaking now, that you can like get these characters back to life, kind of, whether that's a good thing or bad thing. But like we're at a stage now where you can totally recreate a person in a film.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily want to get into the ethical standpoints of recreating actors who have passed on, but I mean, and we will put the link for this video onto our website at notthatbadcast.com. So go to the episode page. If you are listening to this episode, you will be able to see that video. We'll post it there for you all to check out. But it's one of those things where I know there are a ton of Star Trek novels that kind of fill in the gaps as well. There's a lot of ground to cover. And I think ground was covered very well with Generations. Yes, it's an odd number film. No, that doesn't make it bad. If you like Next Generation, you're going to enjoy this film, despite some, yes, flaws, I will admit, and a couple of plot holes here and there, but no movie really is perfect. If you really nitpick, and we've been around a while, so we nitpick a lot, but don't take the fact that this is an odd number film and walk away from it. Don't look at Shatner and go, oh, he's back again somehow. No, he's there. It's good. Maybe not what you wanted, but it's not horrible. This isn't Star Trek V horrible. I still can't watch that film. I watched it once, never again. And I know somewhere down the road that film will come back and haunt me on another episode, but that's for another time. We get to the end of our show here. So I have to ask you, Star Trek Generations, who is your MVP?
I would say whoever the cinematographer was and the lighting DP. The Enterprise has never looked so good, and the VFX so good. They hold up today still. So those would be my MVPs. Obviously, in terms of characters, Picard is my homeboy, so I would go with Picard. I think he really carries the movie. Kind of, it is kind of a Picard movie. Deals with a lot of things that his character would be experiencing. I mean, obviously, the death of his nephew and his brother is like a big turning point in the movie, and he plays it very well. Like, I can't even imagine like what you have to do as an actor to like be able to get those feelings out on command, like on stage. Like his brother and his nephew just died, and it's believable. So like Patrick Stewart's an amazing actor, and I just don't even know how he does it.
I mean, I'm glad you brought up the cinematographer and the lighting team, because obviously when you're filming for television, especially in the 90s, you're filming things, for lack of a better term, somewhat flat as far as the lighting goes, because you need to be able to light everything in a way that works for television cameras. They didn't shoot them with film, as I recall. They shot them television flat, like even lighting across the rooms. Here, it looks like they were making a point of figuring out, well, what's outside the ship at the time and what kind of light would that throw in through the windows, especially in Picard's ready room. Like that's where you really saw exterior light shadowing come into play. And it especially when Riker's like sitting down and it is definitely in the shaded area. Then he stands up and he's almost in the light. Like for the first time in the Next Generation history, it felt like the outside and what was around the ship mattered to what was inside the ship. So clearly some more thought was put into what would happen if you were outside of a sun, or what happened if you were near some kind of light emitting source. So yeah, they clearly thought about that, but you're right. Patrick Stewart is really the perfect statesman captain of all of Star Trek, and a phenomenal actor, whether he's having comedic moments, whether he's having very serious moments, whether he is acting outwardly, even though his character's emotions are very inwardly driven. Patrick Stewart, yes, is my MVP. Although I did have Malcolm McDowell also as a secondary, because let's be honest, in any kind of hero type movie, and you could argue that Star Trek does kind of fall into that category, you base your story on the villain, which is why Wrath of Khan is so good, because of Khan Noonien Singh, which is why First Contact is so good, because of the Borg, which is why Undiscovered Country is so good, which is why the motion picture is not. But Malcolm McDowell did exactly what you wanted him to do. His friendship with Patrick Stewart really gave them both an ease together on screen, but it is Patrick Stewart for me. John, thank you so much for this. Now, please, before we go, please remind our listeners all about the Canadian Podcast Awards and where they can find you and them on the interwebs. Yeah,
so the Canadian Podcast Awards, you can find us at campodAwards.ca. It's a free industry award event, free to join, sign up, put your podcast in a database. Usually around the fall each year, we open up nominations. So anyone who's a member can nominate shows and vote on shows for the awards in that year. And we do it all volunteer basis, free. None of us make any money off this. It only costs us money and time, but we're happy to do it because we love the Canadian podcasting community and we think Canadian content should be promoted in Canada, especially now.
Well, that's the nice thing too, is if you go to the Canadian Podcast Awards website and you see the directory, it's broken down by province, it's broken down by city. So if you're looking for local podcasts too, you're going to be able to get that as well. And if you're a Canadian podcaster, take advantage of getting into this directory. Get to know some of your other podcasts. It is a fantastic community. We're all Canadian, so it's all good. And we're sorry. It's the Canadian thing, but yes, John, thank you so much. And by the way, Canadian podcasters, make sure you follow along with some of the events they put on, because they do put on events every year. Get involved with the community, and let's hear from you guys. John, thank you. And to you, our listeners, thank you so much. Now, you guys know the drill. If there is a movie out there that is unfairly maligned, or there is no way in the Nexus that we can find anything good to say about it, hit us up on social media at NotThatBadCast, or go to our website at NotThatBadCast.com. And while you're there, make sure you check out our music shows, There Can Only Be One and Spin Shuffle Skip. Until next time, he's John, I'm Jay, you guys are awesome. This is It's Not That Bad, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Take care.